Bobby came sailing in the back door calling to his mother, "Mom, Oscar's bleeding." When Kathy heard those words, she certainly paid attention, but she was very quick to process. Kathy is not a new mom. This is not her first child, and so her experience kicked in. Those words did not put her heart in her mouth. No, she processed the information quickly. Bobby had not referred to himself or his brother as bleeding, and so if Oscar's bleeding, she needs to investigate it, but this doesn't seem to be super scary. So she stopped what she was doing and went to find Bobby, which she did promptly. He led her out into the backyard and pointed out Oscar's problem. He indeed was bleeding, but not very much. He had injured a dew claw. So a dew claw is an accessory digit. It's a digit like a finger on a dog, but it's an extra one that doesn't reach the ground. They're usually on the inside and maybe a little bit to the back, and they're usually on the front legs. They're kind of a curiosity because you don't see them in wolves. You see them in domestic dogs. No one has really given a convincing explanation for why they exist, and most breeders remove them from newborn pups because that's the easiest time to get rid of these things. They can be a nuisance in an older dog. Now recall that Oscar was adopted from the animal shelter, so he was not cared for in his early days by an experienced dog breeder. His history is actually unknown, but he wound up in an animal shelter as a nearly full-grown dog. Now he's essentially full-grown, and he has dew claws on both his front legs. He has injured them before. This is not the first time this has come up, and Kathy made a note that someday something might need to be done. So she examined his paw, and he let her do that. She's very gentle, and Oscar had no fear that she would hurt him. What she saw was that the dew claw had been torn, and this was the source of the bleeding. She looked at his other leg, and there was a dew claw there, but no signs of acute injury. She thought, we probably should take Oscar to the veterinarian and get this problem taken care of. It's only going to get worse. She reassured Bobby that she was going to take care of this, and then she went in the house and telephoned the veterinarian's office. She was told that they could bring Oscar by later this afternoon, so that was the plan. Craig was not at home. He was off with Trevor, and Robert was still at work. So Bobby, Oscar, and Kathy loaded into the car and went to the veterinarian's office for their appointment. After a quick exam, the veterinarian recommended removal of both dew claws. He said it's unfortunate that these were left until adulthood because it's much easier to take care of them in the newborn stage. He explained that Oscar would need a quick general anesthetic and that removal of dew claws is not technically very difficult. The challenge will be after the surgery because the tendency is for dogs to chew and lick these wounds and they can become infected. So the veterinarian recommended a cone collar for the first 10 days to prevent Oscar from interfering with the healing of these wounds. Kathy asked, when should we do that? Is that something we should schedule? And the veterinarian said, yes, we can do it next week. When the time came, Kathy brought Oscar to the veterinarian's office while the boys were in school. Later that afternoon, she went back and picked him up, and he indeed had a cone collar applied, and he didn't seem very happy about that. He seemed kind of fidgety. She brought him home, and he took water and food readily, and he had bandages on both his forepaws. When the boys got home, they saw him in his sorry state with his cone collar. It didn't take Craig very long to call the cone collar by its other name, and that is the cone of shame, that being perhaps a term used by dogs who have to wear it. Gradually, Oscar got very used to the collar and didn't mess with his bandages. The bandages were removed, and after 9 days, the cone collar was removed. Oscar seemed very relieved to get rid of that collar. It was a nuisance for him for sure. He then behaved essentially normally. He did lick his wounds, but by now they were healing rather well. It seems that Bobby was more relieved than Oscar by the removal of that collar. He was happy to have his regular dog back without the encumbrance of that silly collar. He and Oscar celebrated by a good long round of fetch the ball and fetch the frisbee in the backyard. Bobby was thinking, good as new. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite comments below, and I hope you join us in future videos. We'll see you soon.